Number 10, we have LeBron James in 2009. I believe that no one has ever done a better job at carrying a weak supporting cast in the regular season. They posted 66 wins without any all-star caliber players. The Cavs even went 39-2 on their home floor, which is the best mark ever, behind only the 1986 Boston Celtics. They were reaching Pantheon-level stuff, and it's all thanks to LeBron. He's the only player, along with Michael Jordan, to post a 20 win shares and 11 value over replacement player rating. He also led the team in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. On top of that, he was the main reason why the Cavaliers were arguably the best defensive team in the NBA. Number 9, we have Michael Jordan in 1988. He became the first and only player to ever win the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year award, and scoring title in one season. And just for good measure, he also led the league in steals. On top of that, he posted the highest value over replacement player rating in league history, and the highest win shares by any player since the merger. Oh wait, I almost forgot. He's also one of 4 players to post over 200 steals and 100 blocks. And he has the highest field goal percentage by any player who averaged over 35 points. He accomplished this while players such as Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, and Charles Barkley were all in their prime. But Jordan was easily the best player in the world. Number 8, we have Wilt Chamberlain in 1964. Some of his notable achievements is that he recorded the second highest win shares and 5th most total points scored in a season. But nothing was more impressive than carrying a team that Sports Illustrated called the slowest players and worst shooters ever to play in the NBA to the 3rd best record in the league. This was an abomination of a team, and Wilt carried them to greatness. He did this by trusting his teammates more and dominating on the defensive end. It's no accident that he finished with the 2nd highest defensive win shares of his career. This same team that missed the playoffs the prior year reached the finals, and it was all because of one player. I believe this is the most underrated season in the history of the league. Number 7, we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1971. His biggest accomplishment is that he led the Milwaukee Bucks to the most dominant season in NBA history. They currently have the highest simple rating system and the 2nd highest margin of victory for a single season. A big reason for their success was that Kareem was the anchor of their number 1 rated defense, that he was the most efficient scorer ever. He recorded the highest field goal percentage by any player who was averaged over 30 points. He demanded a double team every time he touched the ball, but he had no problems kicking the ball out to his teammates. He displayed so much maturity for a player who was in his 2nd year. Number 6, we have Steph Curry in 2016. He not only won the scoring title and the MVP, but he was also the best player on the greatest regular season team. On top of that, he had the greatest shooting season in the history of the sport. He made the most 3-pointers with 402. What's even more insane is that he shot a career high 45.4%. That's the highest percentage by any player that has attempted at least 7 threes per game. He also has the highest true shooting percentage by any player that has averaged over 30 points. He was a volume 3-point shooter, and yet he still had a 50-40-90 shooting splits. He put up those numbers while making shots like these. What he was doing was insane, and I wouldn't knock anyone for having this number 1. Number 5, we have Michael Jordan in 1996. Here's the next player who posted dominant numbers while leading his team to over 70 wins. He accomplished this by completely controlling the game with his incredibly high basketball IQ. And that's on both ends of the floor. On offense, he took his time and took advantage of the mismatches he was able to create. In fact, this is the only season from 1994 to 2000 where a player averaged over 30 points. It was not easy to be an efficient volume scorer during this time, but MJ made it work. On the other side of the court, he was the leader of their legendary defensive attack. In fact, he has the 7th highest defensive win shares by any guard since the merger. It is no accident that he led this team to basketball immortality. Number 4, we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1972. This is the season where he posted the highest win shares, offensive win shares, and win shares per 48 minutes for a single season. This is an incredible achievement that proves how unstoppable he was in his prime. His per game numbers are also just as impressive. He's the only player to average over 55% while scoring at least 34 points per game. He was asked to do more with Oscar Robertson missing 18 games, but the Bucks still found a way to win 63 games and post an 11.16 margin of victory. That's the 5th highest mark ever. The reason for their dominance was that Kareem had arguably the greatest season by a center. Number 3, we have Wilt Chamberlain in 1962. Let me put this disclaimer out there. It should be common knowledge at this point that Wilt's numbers are a bit tainted. There were much more possessions than they are now, and there were hardly any teams that had a player physically capable of stopping him. But on the other end, they played the same 48 minutes as they do now. Instead of trusting in sports science, he averaged 48.5 minutes per game and produced the greatest statistical season of all time. Just a few of his notable records include recording over 4,000 points. He had 45 total games where he scored over 50 points, which of course includes his 100-point game that came against the Knicks. This was a record-breaking season in every sense of the word. However, my reasoning for not placing him number 1 is strictly out of principle. Do you understand the level of ball hogging that comes with averaging 39.5 shots per game, but only 2.4 assists per game? Have you ever seen the roster of the New York Knicks, the team that the Warriors played 12 times? I'll just say that there is a reason why he averaged a combined 65.4 points against them that year. I just don't think that the greatest season of all time should come under those circumstances. But I wouldn't blame anyone for making this number 1. Number 2, we have LeBron James in 2013. He was the most lethal weapon a team can hope to have. He was the greatest physical specimen who evolved into the most efficient basketball player. What makes that even more impressive is everything he was asked to do for his team. He ran the team's offense. He shot over 40% from the 3. He was their best post-up player. He was unstoppable on the open court, and he defended the other team's best score. It's no wonder that this team ended up winning 27 games straight. From an analytical standpoint, he recorded the 5th highest win shares per 48 minutes, the 10th highest PER, and the 11th highest value over replacement player rating. It was as flawless of a season that we'll ever come across. Number 1, we have Michael Jordan in 1991. The greatest basketball player of all time, in my opinion, was at the peak of his superb athleticism. He was 27 years old, and the things he would do on the court were outstanding. But he was able to mix that incredible talent with his newfound knowledge of how to win games. With no other teammate being selected as an all-star, he led the Bulls to over 60 wins. They also had the best offensive rating, margin of victory, and simple rating system in the league. They are currently in the top 20 all-time for those last 2 categories. From an individual standpoint, this is only the 3rd time that a player reached a 20-point win shares and a value over replacement player rating of over 10. This is also only the 2nd time that a player averaged over 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2.5 steals. Rick Barry also accomplished this in 1975. This was the start of the greatest run from a modern player/team, and they would have never gone there if Jordan hadn't given the greatest MVP season ever. At number 10, we have Shaquille O'Neal in 2001. This was essentially part 2 of his legendary playoff run in 2000. His best stretch came in the semifinals against the Kings. In Game 1, he went for the monster stat line of 44 points on 53% shooting, 21 rebounds, 7 blocks, and 4 assists. Then he did it all over again in the following game. He had 43 points on 69% shooting, 20 rebounds, and 3 blocks. That's back-to-back 40-20 games. He would record that stat line yet again in the finals. In Game 1, he had 44 points on 61% shooting and 20 rebounds. They suffered their only loss of the postseason, so he decided to focus on the defensive end. In Game 2, he nearly recorded a quadruple double. He had 28 points, 20 rebounds, 9 assists, and 8 blocks. Being the best player on arguably the greatest playoff team helps him reach the top 10. Number 9, we have Michael Jordan in 1992. He started by making history. In the first round series against Miami, he averaged 45 points on 61% shooting, 9.7 rebounds, 6.7 assists, and 3 steals per game. In Game 3, he recorded 56 points on 67% shooting. That is tied for the 4th highest playoff scoring game. In the next series against the Knicks, the Bulls were pushed to the limit. This is where he forced his will despite his teammates struggling on offense. The perfect example of this came in Game 7. He recorded 42 points on 52% shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. In the finals against Portland, he gave us a pair of legendary moments. There was the iconic shrug game where he went for 35 points on 6 made 3-pointers in the first half. Then in Game 5, he went for 46 points on 61% shooting. That's the 10th highest scoring game in the finals. Number 8, we have Dwayne Wade in 2006. This legendary run started in the conference finals. They played against the Detroit Pistons, who are widely regarded as one of the greatest offensive teams ever. But they had no answers for the Flash. There were 3 games where he shot over 70% from the field. For the series, he averaged 26.7 points on 62% shooting. After losing the first 2 games of the finals, he turned into peak Michael Jordan. In the final 4 games, he nearly averaged over 40 points per game. He was also extremely clutch, just like his airness. He had a 15-point fourth quarter in Game 3, and then he had 21 total points in the fourth quarter in overtime of Game 5. That includes making the game-tying bucket with 2.8 seconds left in the fourth quarter. For the series, he averaged 34.7 points on 47% shooting. No one else for the Heat averaged over 14 points. The reality is that Miami's title was more about the greatness of one player than of the team. Number 7, we have Hakeem Olajuwon in 1994. Here's what he accomplished. He is the only player to have led his team in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals for a title-winning team. He also has the record for the most blocks for a playoff run. We have never seen a player carry their team on both ends of the floor as Hakeem did. The best example of that came in Game 2 of the first round series against the Blazers. He had 46 points on 53% shooting, 8 rebounds, 6 blocks, 4 assists, and 4 steals. When he was pushed to the limit by a tough Phoenix Suns team in the semifinals, he responded with a clutch performance. In Game 7, he had 37 points on 55% shooting, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. His best defensive performance was in the series-clinching Game 5 against the Utah Jazz. He had 7 blocks and 4 steals. Speaking of defense, he completely shut down Patrick Ewing in the finals. He was held to 18.9 points on 36% shooting for the series. The Rockets didn't have anyone else who averaged over 14 points for the playoffs, which makes his postseason run so impressive. Number 6, we have Michael Jordan in 1993. What you're looking at is the highest points per game average for a player that won the title. Some of his most notable performances includes the buzzer beater he made against the Cavaliers in Game 4 of the semifinals. In the conference finals against the Knicks, he recorded 54 points on 60% shooting in Game 4. But it was his performance in the finals that makes his top 5 worthy. He averaged 41 points on 51% shooting, 8.5 assists, and 6.3 rebounds per game. That is the highest scoring average for the finals. He scored over 40 points in 4 straight games. That includes his Game 4 performance when he had 55 points on 58% shooting. That's the second highest scoring game in NBA Finals history. Number 5, we have LeBron James in 2016. He started by destroying his Eastern Conference opponents. 9 of their 12 victories were by double digits. But things got a lot more difficult when he faced the greatest regular season team of all time in the finals. They proved their dominance after going up 3-1 in the series. What he did in the next 3 games was the stuff of legends. On the road, he went for 41 points on 53% shooting, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. In Game 6, he goes for 41 points on 59% shooting, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 blocks. Then in Game 7, he recorded a triple-double and he made the greatest defensive play of all time. It's the Iguodala block that saved their championship hopes. For the series, he averaged 29.7 points on 49% shooting, 11.3 rebounds, 8.9 assists, 2.6 steals, and 2.3 blocks per game. He imposed his will in every single aspect of the game. That was needed to achieve the greatest finals comeback ever. Number 4, we have Shaquille O'Neal in 2000. He posted the 6th most points and 10th most rebounds for a playoff run. This is how it all started. In the first game of the playoffs, he went for 46 points on 64% shooting, 17 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 2 steals. He set the tone right from the beginning. Teams were forced to throw 3 to 4 players at him just to contain this beast. He would usually end up dunking on their team anyway. No team suffered more than the Indiana Pacers. There were 3 games during that final series where he scored over 40 points. There were 3 instances where he shot over 60% from the field. He had 40 points, 24 rebounds, and 3 blocks in Game 2. For the series, he averaged 38 points on 61% shooting, 16.7 rebounds, and 2.7 blocks per game. That is the 4th highest scoring average in the finals. Number 3, we have Tim Duncan in 2003. He recorded the highest win shares and the 2nd highest value over replacement player rating. He also recorded the 2nd most blocks and the 8th most rebounds. He became only the 3rd player since the merger to win a title while being the only player on the team to average more than 15 points. You can't win a title under those circumstances unless you're a dominant player. That was especially showcased against the Lakers when he ended the Kobe and Shaq dynasty. In Game 6, he had 37 points on 64% shooting, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. In the following 2 series, he proved why he's the greatest power forward of all time. There were so many games where his numbers looked like it came straight out of a video game. There are too many to mention, but we'll highlight his best performances in the finals. In Game 3, in the title clinching game, he had an unofficial quadruple-double. I'm sure all the Spurs fans can attest to that. He had 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocks. For a playoff run that is filled with all-time great numbers, he topped it all off with arguably the greatest finals game. Number 2, we have LeBron James in 2012. Let's first start with the statistical case. He recorded the highest offensive win shares, the 2nd highest win shares, and the 3rd highest value over replacement player rating. It's also important to remember that this playoff run was not a cakewalk. They lost Chris Bosh to injury in the semifinals, and he did not play until Game 5 of the conference finals. He needed to carry the weight of the team on his broad shoulders. According to the numbers, he did it in a way no player has before. Take for example Game 4 against the Pacers when he had 40 points on 52% shooting, 18 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. But nothing was bigger when he saved his team's season in his greatest playoff performance. In Game 6, he went for 45 points on 73% shooting, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists. Remember, he defeated the Big 3 Celtics with only Dwayne Wade by his side. With the gang back together in the finals, they used a team effort to defeat the Thunder. LeBron had an exceptional all-around performance. He averaged 28.6 points on 47% shooting, 10.2 rebounds, and 7.4 assists per game. Number 1, we have Michael Jordan in 1991. The case that placed this in the number 1 spot is due to his all-around excellence and the dominant postseason record the Bulls had. They went 15-2. In both games, they lost by 2 points, and both times an opponent made a game-winning three-pointer. It was as complete of a playoff run as a player could have. From a statistical standpoint, he recorded the second highest box plus minus, the 6th highest offensive box plus minus, and the 7th highest value over replacement player rating. If you want scoring, he showed that in Game 3 against the Sixers when he had 46 points on 59% shooting, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, and 4 blocks. If you want rebounding, he showed that in Game 5 of the same series. He had 19 rebounds along with 38 points and 7 assists. He even out-rebounded the great Charles Barkley. If you want defense, he showed that in Game 3 against the Pistons when he had 5 blocks and 3 steals. And if you want playmaking, he did that all series long in the finals. He averaged 11.4 assists per game. That's the 7th highest assist per game mark in the finals, and it's the highest by any player not named Magic Johnson. And he also averaged 2.4 steals per game, which is the 4th highest mark in the finals. On top of all that, he averaged 31.2 points on 56% shooting. He was as perfect as you can ever get in the playoffs. This player. Number 10, we have Tim Duncan. Someone has to be disrespected in this list, and this is where I'll probably be accused of committing blasphemy. I don't want to make it sound like I don't recognize his greatness. I believe he is a modern day Bill Russell. He's the only player to start on a championship winning team in 3 different decades. He won 5 titles and 6 finals appearances, and he reached the conference finals 3 other times. So for nearly half of his career, he led his team to the conference finals. He also resembles Bill Russell on the defensive end. He's the all-time leader in all defensive team selections. He's 2nd in career defensive win shares behind Russell, and he's 3rd in defensive rating. He is the greatest winner of the modern era. My only issue is that he was never as physically imposing or dominant as the next 9 players. Number 9, we have Shaquille O'Neal. Out of all the nicknames he has given himself, the one that describes him perfectly is MDE, most dominant ever. The combination of his size, strength, mobility, and skills remains without comparison. And unlike some of the other giants in league history, he was not afraid to impose his will over every poor soul that guarded him. For example, he's only the 2nd player to win 3 consecutive finals MVPs and to have 2 final series averaging over 35 points. His 2000 MVP season remains one of the greatest ever. From 1994 to 2006, his teams never won fewer than 50 games, and there were 3 seasons where they won over 60 games. If we're talking about players at their peak, you can say that there was no one better than Shaq. Number 8, we have Larry Bird. What he accomplished was historic. He and Bill Russell are the only players to have won 3 straight MVP awards. From 1980 to 1988, he led his team to at least the conference finals for 8 of those 9 seasons. That includes 5 trips to the finals and 3 titles. What happened in 1989? He suffered major injuries, and the Celtics win 42-40. Then he comes back, he's nowhere near 100%, and they go back up to 52 wins. That's just a small taste of how impactful he was to that team. The numbers that he would put up were fantastic, but what made him so special is that he loved to do the little things, the dirty work, that made the difference between winning and losing. That's why they were so successful in the 80s. The only thing that's holding him back is the lack of longevity. Number 7, we have Kobe Bryant. Let's start with the records he holds. He's tied for the most all-defensive team selections. He has the 2nd most all-NBA first team selections. He's 4th all-time in career points. And he's the only player to score at least 600 points in 3 consecutive postseasons. He played at a high level for over 15 years. And that level was up there with Michael Jordan. It's not just the numbers, but the nuances. It was his killer will and his legendary scoring ability that can be described as art. It's true that he benefited from playing with Shaq, but in 2001, they nearly became the only pair of teammates to average over 30 points in the playoffs. That is why they nearly went undefeated. After the Shaq era ended, He reached the finals 3 times and won 2 titles without a single teammate that is a top 50 player. Number 6, we have Wilt Chamberlain. Here's the obvious case for Wilt. He holds 72 records. Some of his highlighted records are that he averaged 50.4 points in 1962. He's the all-time leader in rebounds. He's the only center to lead the league in assists. And of course, there was that one game where he scored 100 points. I believe he's the most statistically imposing player in all of sports. But the reason why he's not in my top 5 was his inability to perform at the same level when it really counted. I'm sure you've heard the stat line that Bill Russell beat him 7 out of 8 times in the playoffs. But did you know that from 1966 to 1969, Wilt's team had home court advantage and had the more talented team for those 4 years? Yet he still got beaten 3 times. If only he was more successful in the playoffs, then it would be a no-brainer to crown him the GOAT. Number 5, we have Magic Johnson. He's the best floor general and the best showman the game has ever seen. What makes him such a beloved player was his brilliant passing skills. He had the ability to take your breath away without scoring a single point. That is what makes his performances so magical. But what makes him a top 5 player is his ability to raise his game in the playoffs. He has averaged over 12 assists in the finals 6 times. No other player has done it even once. He has the most triple-doubles in playoff history. Then in the 1987 finals, there is no other player that has come even close to averaging over 26 points and 13 assists. And before his first retirement, the Lakers averaged 59.3 wins with him under center. That includes 6 60-win seasons. That is why he's the greatest point guard of all time. Number 4, we have Bill Russell. The case for him is very simple. He's the greatest winner and the most impactful defensive player of all time. That is the reason why he led the Celtics to 11 championships. It's not because they were loaded with talent. Their biggest strength was always their defense. That is all Russell's doing. There's a reason why his contemporaries voted him as the MVP 5 times. But what about his low scoring numbers? Well, he believed in everyone having a specific role on the team, and scoring was not his primary job. But he could score if he wanted to. If you don't believe me, check out the 1966 finals when he averaged 23.6 points on 54% shooting. All he cared about was winning, and no one was better at that. Number 3, we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I believe he's the most accomplished player ever. He's the all-time leader in career win shares and offensive win shares. He won the most MVPs. He's second in career points, and he's third in career rebounds and blocks. Now check out all that he accomplished in the 70s alone. He won 5 MVPs. He won a title. He averaged over 30 points 4 times. He finished first in blocks twice, and he led the Bucks to 3 straight 60-win seasons. He did so much in that decade alone, and then he went on to win 5 more titles in the 80s. That includes being the oldest player to win Finals MVP at the age of 38. So why is he not even higher on this list? Well, there were 2 seasons, in 1975 and 1976, where he failed to reach the playoffs, and he was in the middle of his prime. I believe that is too big of a blemish for a player to be considered the greatest ever. Number 2, we have LeBron James. There's nothing else for him to accomplish because he's done it all. There are too many numbers to rattle off to make the case for the next 2 players. Their greatness is undeniable. In LeBron's case, he has been a freak of nature since the moment he arrived in the NBA, and he's still going strong. There are no weaknesses to his game. He's a legendary playoff performer. He brought a championship to every team he's played for. I have no original thought to give to this player because everything has been said already. But here's why I don't have him number 1. I believe Jordan's prime was better. I believe Jordan performed better in the playoffs. And I believe LeBron's biggest failure outweighs Jordan's by a mile. I believe for a player to be crowned the greatest of all time, your career needs to have as few blemishes as possible. Understandably, no one's career was perfect. Everyone had their failures. But some mistakes are bigger than others. and Jordan never underperformed quite like LeBron did in the 2010 and 2011 playoffs. Number 1, we have Michael Jordan. It's the combination of his individual greatness, his big-time performances in the playoffs, and his ability to carry his team to greatness year after year. He might not have compiled a bunch of stats, but the numbers say that no one had a higher peak than MJ. Whether it's recording the highest points per game, win shares, and value over replacement player rating for a single season in the modern NBA, or recording the highest points per game average for a final series, or recording the highest assists per game average for the finals by any player not named Magic Johnson, or leading his team to 72 wins and winning the title, or being the only player to win the scoring title, MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year award in the same season. The list goes on and on. All this time later, we still haven't seen anything better. Thanks for sticking around for this video. I look forward to seeing everyone's rankings in the comments section. Till next time.